New CFP schedule for 2024-25. What works and the quirks. Thanks for stopping by here at the Voice of College Football for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Please like and subscribe. Let's check out the college football playoff schedule that was announced. We will make a projection toward what it could look like in regards to projected teams, and then also look back to 2023 to give you a look at what it would have played out to be based on the schedule that was released. And then we're going to talk about some of the conflicts, some of the challenges, some of the quirks concerning the system and the scheduling for 2024 and 25. Let's first get to what this would have looked like in 2023. Once again, here's the schedule layout, and we've reviewed this a few times this week here at the Voice of College Football, so we'll do this briefly and then get back to this and really review the challenges. So the Friday and Saturday setup looks like this, with a single game in primetime on Friday, the triple header on Saturday. There you see the networks listed. Those are on-campus games, of course, seeds 5 through 12. Then we kick it to the next weekend, and we look at the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day lineup involving all the major bowl games and the current New Year's 6 games, and then on into the semifinals. For the first time during this playoff era, they will be split on separate nights. That's Thursday and Friday, folks, to avoid the NFL, and then the national championship game pushed all the way back to January 20th. Now let's look at 2023 and how this might have played out. These are the final college football playoff rankings before postseason play. Michigan number 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Bama 4, and the other undefeated team, of course, the ACC champion Florida State, left out at 13-0, number 5. Georgia 6 after losing the SEC championship game. Ohio State at 7. Oregon lost the Pac-12 title game. They dropped to 8. Mizzou, Penn State, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma, all 10-2 teams. And it would have been a pretty clear-cut choice in regards to records, differentiating the 10-2 teams versus the 9-3 teams. So no real controversies there, at least in regards to the final spots. Of course, we addressed the Florida State situation. Now let's convert this into the model. So we elevate the conference champions, and we get a much different look at the playoff. Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Bama 4, and then Florida State moves up to number 5 as the 5th highest-ranked conference champion. Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Mizzou, Penn State, Ole Miss. And then, of course, the group of 5 entry is Liberty at 13-0, number 23 in the country. They eked past SMU, who, despite the 2 losses, had a much better resume against group of 5 competition, and the 2 losses were against the Power 5, but SMU left out at number 24. So Liberty jumps all the way from 23 to number 12, and get used to this playoff system. The group of 5 is going to be elevated, of course, into that 12th seed position at the very least. This is how it would have played out in regards to a TV schedule. You would have had an 8 o'clock kickoff on Friday night, then the triple header that we outlined on Saturday. This is my projection, that the best games would be held for Friday primetime, Saturday primetime, and then those TNT matchups are going to be the dogs of the lineup. So Florida State Liberty, clearly the dog of this lineup in the first round, the 5-12 matchup. Florida State hosting Liberty. We've got Oregon and Mizzou at the 8-9 game. That could be a really good game, but lower profile team certainly, even though it might end up being the best game of the weekend on the field. That game would be played at Eugene as the higher seed. I'm going Friday night with Georgia, Ole Miss. The 2 teams played in the regular season of 2023. Georgia whipped Ole Miss 52-17, and they would host the rematch again in Athens, and we would have another rematch. Ohio State, Penn State, the 7-10 game. The Buckeyes won in Columbus 20-12, and they would host the playoff game, and they would do so, I believe it would have been on that Saturday primetime window. Let's project the quarterfinals with chalk winning out. Michigan would have taken on Oregon as a 1-8 game. Really nice matchup there. Washington, Ohio State, the 2-7 matchup. Texas, Georgia, of course, they will play in the regular season in 2023 as colleagues in the SEC. Bama, Florida State, the 4-5 matchup. We had a conversation this week with Bill Bender of Sporting News. Please check it out. It's only a few videos ago. And again, a great talk on college football and a possible Super League. But here we look at Bill Bender and the compilation he made this week of the 8 top college football sites and their preseason top 25. So we're going to take this composite that Bill put together and we're going to project what the playoffs would look like coming up here in 2024 and 25. So here you see the listing of the sites included in this projected 2024 top 25. Georgia's number 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Oregon 4. Ole Miss rounds out the top 5. Then we go Bama, Notre Dame, Mizzou, Michigan, Penn State, Florida State, Utah, and of course the SEC and the Big Ten dominating this with just Notre Dame breaking into that top 10. And then you've got to move in the ACC champion and the Big 12 champion, and it just so plays out based on the preseason rankings of these 8 sites that Florida State's number 11 and Utah 12. LSU, Tennessee, and Clemson are the first 3 out at 13, 14, and 15. Convert this into the playoff model. So again, we've got to elevate all the conference champions into the top 4 spots. That means Georgia's 1, Ohio State's 2. Florida State jumps all the way from 11 to 3. Utah all the way from 12 to 4. And if you look back, once Clemson declined in the ACC, this is what it's going to look like, we believe, because this is what recent history has been out of the remaining schools in the Big 12 and the ACC. They're going to be the 10th, 12th, 15th ranked teams in the country that are going to have to be elevated as conference champions into the top 4. Then the seedings proceed as follows. Texas 5, Oregon 6, Ole Miss, Bama, Notre Dame, Mizzou, Michigan at number 11. Penn State, you're number 10 in the country in the college football playoff rankings, projected, but you're out of the playoff because we've got to make room for Boise State. So Boise State, as a team that received only 2 votes in these top 25s, Memphis had 1, so Boise State jumps all the way from unranked to number 12 in the country, and they get that G5 representation. Let's get to the TV times and the kickoffs and how this could play out in regards to seedings and matchups and what I project. Again, we're going to put the dog game, Texas-Boise State, played at Austin as the Saturday noon game on TNT Sports. Ole Miss and Mizzou, SEC counterparts, will not play in the 2024 regular season, so this won't be a rematch as the 7-10 game. And then the primetime game on Saturday, Bama, Notre Dame, 8-9 matchup in Tuscaloosa. So Notre Dame may have something to squawk about there if the resumes are extremely close, or maybe they have a nod over Bama in terms of record or something else, because this 8-9 situation is going to be awfully interesting. Also the 7-10 in regards to what the College Football Playoff Committee decides, because it's going to be a huge decision in terms of who's going to get that home field advantage. Oregon, Michigan, that game in Eugene for a possible projected playoff, but the 2 teams had already played on November 2nd. Again, Michigan, the defending national champions, taking on Oregon in the 6-11 matchup, and we've got that slated for Friday. If all the higher seeds win, then we've got a Georgia-Bama rematch from the September 28th game. Georgia, Bama, and of course, these are going to be New Year's 6 bowl destinations. Ohio State and Ole Miss have never played. That's a 2-7 matchup, and that's what we're looking for in this college football playoff, are games we've never seen. Last time we saw Florida State on the field against Oregon, it was a blowout for the Ducks en route to a national championship game appearance in 2014-15 at the Rose Bowl. They would be the 3-6 matchup as Florida State, of course, got the bye and Oregon got the win. Utah moves in with the bye as the 4th seed in the Big 12 champion, taking on Texas. The last time those 2 teams played was in the 2019 Alamo Bowl. So that's a fun little exercise looking at the playoffs and what it could look like based on preseason projections. Now let's go back to our Big Ten Live show from Friday night, where I ran down some of the quirks of the system, reviewed the schedule, the networks, and some of the challenges college football is facing heading into this first 12-team playoff. So there's basically football on all the time. And so you'll have your option of watching NFL regular season or college football postseason playoff games. I was intending on producing a video here in the next couple of days where I'm going to put in last season's results and this season's rankings, expected results rankings, to see who would be playing in these games during these time slots, most likely. Your destination is ABC and ESPN for the first round game. That's probably a determination of programming that they're going to look at that first round matchup. And I would think that that is going to be the second best game of the weekend. This is my thought. And I know just a little bit about this. And so on Saturday, I believe the best game is going to be that first round Saturday night game. The best of the 4 games on opening weekend, they're going to put on ABC or ESPN on Saturday night. The second best game, I believe, is going to be that primetime game on Friday night, and then the other 2 games on TNT. Now, college football is going to run into a bit of an issue that they're going to have to pay attention to during the regular season. The typical sports fan, college football fan, is more savvy, more understanding, more informed than previous generations. They understand streaming, they understand where to go. Most of them, most of you, not everybody. So think back to the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and it used to all be on CBS. You just tuned into CBS, there it is. You got what you got. Then, of course, at some point, they determined, well, people want to be watching all the games. And so they opened up the offerings to TNT and TBS and True TV. We all discovered and were introduced to True TV. And what was the backlash there? What was the common statement made by college basketball fans and the sporting public at large those first couple of years? True TV, what's that? Where do we go? I don't know if I've got it. Who knows? Where is it? Okay. Now, TNT, better known, absolutely. But if you're like me, you don't have your cable channels memorized. And most of you at this point, well, the odds still say that you have cable, because cable saturation is about 75 million out of about 113 or 14 million homes. So it's still 60% of the audience, 60% of the United States. And I'm sure most of you watch TV because you love sports more than the average person. I don't have cable right this second, but I've always had it. And when push comes to shove, when I have to start thinking about, okay, YouTube has this, Hulu has this, start adding it all up, then I'm like, you know what, just re-up on the cable. I don't feel like going through the pros and cons anymore. We'll see what I decide this year. But my point is that college football, if they are smart, and this is going to have to come from college football leadership, because it's not going to come from the networks, because ABC and ESPN don't care if you go to TNT to watch college football playoff games. No, the impetus here is on college football leadership. And this is where the leadership breaks down, because there is no leadership of college football. There's leadership of the SEC and the Big Ten in each conference. There's no leadership of college football. The NCAA doesn't exist. And so they're certainly not going to educate people on where is TNT. Find TNT. We're going to be on. They should be doing like games on TNT near the end of the year. They should be educating people on where to find TNT. They should be promote. We'll see if they do that, but that's what they should do. All right, let's talk some Penn State football. We got Marty Leap here from Rivals. Marty, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I am doing well. What have you been up to?
Oh, not a whole lot. Summertime, kids are home, busy with the baseball schedule, busy with the wife's to-do list around the yard and the house and whatnot. But hey, just another day in paradise, right?
There we go. Love it. All right, let's talk some Penn State football and the headway in recruiting with all the camps and the official visits. It is the month of June, and it's time to make things happen.
Yeah, last week they got started with official visits, added again this weekend. Will be throughout the month. Last weekend, some important guys on campus Lex Cyrus. I mean, again, as I've said for months on here now, if we're going to talk Penn State, probably starts at wide receiver. Lex Cyrus, a 4-star prospect from the Harrisburg area, was on campus last weekend. Going to visit South Carolina this weekend, but Penn State should be the heavy leaders there. I would be absolutely stunned if they don't land him. He was a gold medalist in the state 100s last year in track in Pennsylvania as well. So the kid can absolutely fly. So it should be a nice addition to the receiver room. Brandon Finney, a cornerback they hosted last weekend. Finney is an intriguing one. He's probably their top cornerback target from the McDonough School in Maryland. And if you're a Penn State fan, the McDonough School is one you know very well. Curtis Jacobs, PJ Mustipher, Devon Elise. I know I'm forgetting people. That plays. Denai Dennis Sutton, another one, has been an absolute pipeline for Penn State in recent years. So, again, they have to weather some other visits there, but Finney has come out and called them his leader. So they're in good shape there. And another guy, excuse me, from last weekend, who they seem to really make an impression with, is Corey Sims, a wide receiver from Missouri. Now, Mizzou is going to be tough in that recruitment, especially with the way Mizzou is throwing around NIL money and recruiting right now. But Penn State definitely made an impression there. And, you look ahead to this weekend, some more receivers on campus, Jeff Exener from Maryland and Matthew Otten from Virginia, two guys that I think, Penn State, if they're not the leaders, are definitely top 2 with, probably battling Virginia Tech in both of those recruitments. Otten is a player I really like. He's a guy that I think a lot of recruiting services don't have properly rated yet. And some of that stems from that he's a kid who's just very quiet. So doesn't do a lot of the camps and that sort of thing, but I think could be an absolute stud for them. And I think, assuming Cyrus does commit in the coming days, which seems like is going to happen, probably starts that domino effect at wide receiver as well. And then you look ahead next weekend is a big one because you have the commits on campus. You're also going to have Andrew Olish, who's an in-state target, top 100 recruit at tight end, as well as Michael Carroll, who's probably their top offensive lineman target, also an in-state recruit who they're neck and neck with Alabama for. So that'll be a big weekend as well, especially getting those two guys, two of your top targets, around your commits, because that's always, peer recruiting can be as effective, if not more effective a lot of times, than anything the coaches are going to pitch. You get around the commits, you get the parents around the parents of commits, and those are the people who can really sell what they love about Penn State and why you should come to Penn State. So should be a busy few weeks here. This weekend, another one to watch was running back commit Keandre Barker, who is originally from Texas, was living in Florida, now in Arkansas, was going to visit Arkansas this weekend. The Penn State seems to have righted that ship. He said he's 110% locked in on Penn State now, will not visit Arkansas. But running back commit Tyke Hayes is currently visiting Stanford. So I think the running back recruiting for Penn State will be intriguing to watch. They're going to host Jabrier Wallace-Coleman, who was committed to Georgia for a while from Philadelphia at the end of the month. So that might be one to watch if one of these other guys do flip. But I think if you're a Penn State fan, as long as J1 Siders your running back coach, that's one position you're never going to worry about.
Marty, is the wide receiver need more of a numbers need, or is that just we need a game changer? We need those kind of players?
I think it's a little bit of both, because I think they're at, I want to say like 8 or 9 scholarship receivers on the roster right now, which is a pretty healthy number. But when you don't know how much confidence you have in guys, it's one of those, especially in the transfer portal era and the NIL era where the scholarship limits aren't nearly as concrete as they used to be. Hey, let's throw numbers at the wall. If we like a kid and we think he can play here, let's bring him in. Because, you got to think in theory, you sign 4 receivers in a class, you got to think at least 1 or 2 of them are going to pan out. So I think it's a little bit of both. And like I said, this is, to the luck or whatever you can call it of Penn State, this is a pretty strong regional wide receiver class this year. I mentioned Cyrus, who's from Susquehanna Township, which we're outside of Harrisburg. They have Lyric Samuel, from New York City, currently committed, who I think Samuel has a very high ceiling, 6'4", can absolutely fly for that size. I mentioned Exenor. I like Otten a lot, as I talked about. So it just, sometimes that's how it goes in recruiting. Like this cycle, for example, the defensive line class in the region is not very good. And it's leaving Penn State really not necessarily scrambling, but that's probably the hardest position to kind of pinpoint what their board looks like in recruiting. They're going to host Jaquez Walker this weekend from Florida for an official visit, but the kids visited Florida like 15 times. So I think you can see the writing on the wall there. But like I said, sometimes you just get lucky. Your region is strong in an area of need. And for Penn State, it's a pretty strong wide receiver class in the region this year. And that works out well for them because I think it's a little bit of both. We need the numbers. At the same time, they need some playmakers. And with the speed that Cyrus has, Samuel's another kid who can move pretty well. I think you're kind of going for both and just hoping that the mathematical odds tell you at least one or two of these guys should pan out.
People are down on Drew Aller. And when I talk about people, I'm not talking about Penn State fans. Maybe they are as well. But I got to guess in pockets they're much more supportive. But people across the nation just think he's a major disappointment. I didn't see it quite that way, nor did I think he played well against Ohio State or Michigan in particular. So I'm not looking past that. I'm not putting this on you because you don't carry a crystal ball like none of us do. But I just don't think that people should be surprised if Drew Aller turns out to be everything he was forecasted to be this season. Give the guy a break. It's a pretty slim list of guys that are elite at the quarterback position in their first year at the quarterback position. The Trevor Lawrences and Deshaun Watsons only, walk the earth every so often. So now he's got a full year under his belt, another offseason to try to improve without having that game week preparation week after week to kind of get away from it and work back on technique and reads and everything to be the guy that people expect him to be.
Yeah, I agree. I won't be surprised at all to see Drew make a step. I think one thing last year too, and a lot of Penn State fans, it was the ultimate debate. Is Drew underperforming or is it this wide receiver room pulling him down? Because there were plenty of times, especially against the Ohio State's Michigan of the world, he'd have time to throw the ball and nobody was open. Just nobody was getting separation. And then he would try and force passes in that would make it look like it was a worse throw than it was. I mean, like you said, I can understand why people thought his season was a disappointment with the amount of hoopla he had around him. But I'm with you where if you look at the stats, first year as a starter in the Big Ten, completes 60% of his passes, 2,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's really good for a first-year starter. Now, I do think, not all seasons like that are created equal because let's say he put up those exact same stats, but let's take what he did against Maryland and what he did against Ohio State and flip those games. You probably, even though his stats are identical, you look at his season a lot differently, right? So Drew would be the first person to tell you against the Ohio States, against the Michigans, this year, the Ohio State game when they go to Camp Randall, he's going to have to be better. He's going to have to be better. But I agree that I don't think it's outlandish to expect that jump. The kid's got all the arm talent in the world. The very lazy comparison for a lot of people last year became Christian Hackenberg, which I understand. Because you got the kid, 5-star recruit, Penn State, the quarterback, the big arm. But and this is not a knock on Hack either. If you just the difference in the pocket presence between the two and that sort of thing is night and day. Drew very rarely looked panicked in the pocket the way Hackenberg used to. The footwork was much better than it used to be with Hackenberg. So I didn't like that comparison. It was a comparison that happened. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a big jump from Drew this year, especially if the receivers improve, which, I think, Julian Fleming is not the game breaker that he's projected to be in high school, but he's consistent, going to catch the ball, move the sticks for you. Trey Wallace, a guy we've talked about a lot on the show here over the course last year. So if he's healthy, that's a big boost. These tight ends are really good. I think they're going to throw to the running backs a lot more in Andy Kotelnicki's offense. And also I think Kotelnicki, and not as a slight on Mike Yurcich, because I still think Mike Yurcich is a pretty good coach. His career results speak for themselves. He's put up points and yards everywhere he's gone. But Kotelnicki, I think, does a better job of kind of adjusting to what he has. With Yurcich, it was more of, I'm going to take these players and make them try and fit my system, rather they do or not, as opposed to Kotelnicki, where he can take what he has and make his system fit that. So I think that'll help as well. But yeah, I'm with you. I think I won't be surprised if Drew makes a jump. And again, while I can understand why some people saw last year's disappointment, and to an extent, I'm sure it kind of was, but your first year as a starting quarterback to complete 60% of your passes with 25 scores, only 2 interceptions, that's pretty solid.
But again, the most of that schedule is considered a given. So everybody watched Ohio State, Michigan, and those are the games that people, and me in particular, I got to say, I was a little rough on the throw that wasn't made so you'll remember it better than me. They're still able to beat Michigan at this point. It's a one-score game. There's probably 4 minutes left in the game. He's got a wide open, I forget who it was, coming across the middle. He's probably thrown this route 300 times in the off season because it's just a drag right across the middle. The guy, it's like a 8-yard pass right over the middle and just it's way behind him. Then that sets up fourth down, and whatever they did on fourth down was a debacle. It wasn't his
I
fault.
remember. Yeah, I remember that fourth down just being one of those plays where you just want to rip your hair out. I mean, it was made worse by the fact on third down. So if I remember correctly, I think it was Dante Cephas that was just wide open, and you hit him in stride there. Like you said, you might win that game. You might beat Michigan if you complete that pass. But yeah, and I think those are the areas where Drew needs to improve, and some of that, excuse me, I think came from where. One thing Penn State did with him last year that I understood but I didn't love was I think they really, and part of this was because of the defense they had. They knew they could play this way on offense, probably be okay. Was, hey, be smart, don't turn the ball over, yada, yada, yada. So when the opportunities were there to take those shots, I think it made him a little gun shy because they were so big on smart throws, don't turn it over, don't take risk. And I think that was part of what you saw in a play like that, where when that play was there, he got the big eyes and then rushed it a little bit. And I think a big part of that is going to be, slowing the game down, which in year two as a starter typically happens for a quarterback anyway. And again, that's part of the reason why I'm not going to be surprised if we see him make a jump. But yeah, it's ultimately, I think things have to go pretty sideways, rather it be injuries, guys really underperforming, whatever it is for Penn State to miss the playoff this year. But if they're going to do anything in the playoff, it's going to hinge on Drew, which, hey, it's football. It's almost always going to hinge on your quarterback. But I really do think that this is a team that, I mean, do I think they're built to win a national championship this year? No, but I think they're capable of getting the playoff and maybe winning a game or two if Drew reaches his ceiling and plays to that potential. So, again, I know it's not exactly, rocket science or anything to say it, or a scorching hot take to say that team's going to go as far as their quarterback, but I truly believe Penn State will go as far as Drew Allar this year. And if Drew takes that step, this is a team that I think can get to the playoffs and make a little bit of noise once they're there. And again, like I said, if they miss the playoffs, especially with the schedule, because it's not an overly challenging schedule, 10-2 probably gets them in. I think if they miss it, either there were a lot of injuries or something went severely haywire in terms of guys underperforming or something like that.
Buckeye Battle Cry makes a comment here about James Franklin quarterbacks not improving outside of Trace McSorley. Now, we got to understand that these guys have had the job for so long. He hasn't really had that many quarterbacks because Clifford was there really for so long, McSorley there so long, and now Aller. Like, it seems like they've had like 4 quarterbacks, and Hackenberg, of course. So just my question was going to be basically when you look at USC, Lincoln Riley, and formerly Oklahoma, Ryan Day at Ohio State, there's very much a perspective that because of the acumen of the coach, that they have a significant impact on the quarterback and they're known for molding quarterbacks. Does James Franklin, is he looked upon as having much influence on the quarterback development?
I mean, I don't think he does. I know James in a lot of ways when it comes to this stuff is a very hands-off coach. He's very much a CEO type. I'm also going to disagree with the comment that Sean Clifford didn't improve because ask any Penn State fan, 2019 Sean Clifford and 2023 Sean Clifford, or 2022 Sean Clifford, excuse me, were 2 very different quarterbacks. I mean, I know in the middle of his career there, Sean kind of dipped a little bit, but his last year on campus, he was much, much better than he had been at any point in his career. So I don't think that's fair to say. But yeah, a quarterback has always kind of been the bugaboo with James, right? How many times have we found ourselves at the end of the season saying, man, Penn State is a quarterback away. They're a quarterback away. And like you said, he really hasn't had that many quarterbacks because Hack was a starter for 2 years. McSorley was a 3-year starter. Cliff was a 4-year starter. And now on to Drew Allar. And I mean, I know, Will Levis got a couple starts mixed in there in 2020, but that 2020 season across the board for so many reasons, I just block it out and throw it away because it was pointless for a lot of reasons, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I don't think James plays a big role in the quarterback development. I mean, obviously he plays a role in identifying the guys and who they're going to bring into the program and that sort of thing. But when it comes to that sort of stuff, he puts a lot on his assistants. He trusts his assistants. So yeah, I know he gets a bit of a bad rep for quarterbacks under his watch, but I don't know how fair it is, because at the same time, look at who these guys were. Sean Clifford was a 3-star recruit who, by all accounts, went on to have a pretty good college career. Trace McSorley is a guy that the reason he went to Penn State is because everybody else wanted him to be a safety. James Franklin was the only guy willing to let him play quarterback, and he became arguably the best quarterback in school history. Like, I don't think it's totally fair to knock him for that. If you want to knock on him for maybe some of the misses in recruiting, for, when you had Justin Fields in the fold and couldn't close it out, or maybe this cycle where you have Matt Zollers, who's a borderline 5-star guy who's in state that you lost, I'll give you that. But in terms of the quarterback talent he's had on campus, I think James has done a pretty good job. And it's just a matter of they've never had that true, even for as good as Trace was, and I love him to death. He might be my favorite Penn State football player ever. They've never had that true game-changing, game-breaker kind of quarterback. They've never had their Trevor Williams, their Caleb Williams, or Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, that guy. And, another comparison gets made a lot is James Franklin and Dabo Swinney. And Clemson was always Clemson until Deshaun Watson came along, right? And Penn State, I think, under James Franklin and pre-Deshaun, Clemson are very similar, where they're just right there so close and can't make that jump. And the hope has always kind of been that Drew would be their Deshaun Watson. And I will say, I think if Drew has a big year moving forward, quarterback at Penn State can look a lot different, because usually if you get that one guy that comes along and turns into that high draft pick, the recognizable guy at quarterback, that makes your program a lot more attractive to this other high-end quarterback. So I think, again, that's where Drew's just so important to this whole thing, because I think if he does make that jump this year, and let's be honest, with his arm talent, even if he repeats last year, he may still be a first-round pick. I mean, for goodness sake, Christian Hackenberg was a disaster his last 2 years in college and got drafted like 50th overall or whatever it was, because teams are going to see that arm talent and see that ability Drew has and think, hey, we can get this guy right, and he can be our franchise quarterback. So if he's able to make improvements this year and take a jump, you can pretty much Sharpie him in as a first-round pick with his natural ability. And once that happens, that just changes the entire perception of your program at quarterback, because, again, happened with Clemson with Deshaun Watson. So, like I said, I know James definitely has a bit of a bad rep when it comes to quarterbacks. I think some of it's warranted and justified, but I also think some of it is not justified. And again, in my opinion, for the quarterback talent he's had, he's done a pretty good job, especially Clifford and McSorley. Like I said, 2 3-star guys, one of which most schools didn't even want as a quarterback. And they came here and both went on to win a lot of football games, win big bowl games, both played in a Rose Bowl. And I think he's done a pretty good job, all things considered, on that front.
Marty Lee, Penn State Rivals, and I believe that's pennstate.rivals.com.
Correct.
pennstate.rivals.com. Check out Marty's work right there, talking Penn State football. And of course, this is a key month for everyone across the board. Marty, we appreciate you being here.
Absolutely, Mark. Anytime. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Marty.
Absolutely, buddy.
Great stuff from Marty Leap. I almost called him Penn State, but he is Mr. Penn State for us. So there we go. Catch Marty's work at Rivals. All right. Good time here at the Voice of College Football. I was in the course of running down the college football playoff schedule and what this means in regards to viewership, running into the NFL, and so forth. And again, my prediction here is that the marquee game is going to be played on Saturday night in prime time. The second best game is going to be targeted for Friday night in prime time. And then they're going to put the 2 lesser games, whatever they deem those to be, the 2 lesser games on TNT. I was just advising college football leadership. And again, what is that leadership? It doesn't exist, because the NCAA does not lead college football. Basically, Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey lead college football, but they're conference commissioners. So anyway, there needs to be an education and there needs to be a promotion of TNT during the latter portion of the college football season. They need to be, how you can be sitting watching the NFL in November and they're already running ads for the Masters in April. That's what that needs to be for college football this year. They need to be showing you TNT, first round playoff games on TNT. Like now. They need to start that now. get it ingrained in people's heads that there are going to be college football playoff games on TNT. I would actually pick out a couple decent games, not the best games of the week, decent games. And I understand this upsets the formula. I don't know that this could be worked out now, but I would have anticipated this in advance and put those games, the last couple, like the last 3 regular season weeks, put them on TNT with a college football playoff contender, not against a great team. Put the Penn State Rutgers game on TNT. Put the Clemson Georgia Tech game on TNT. Put the Oregon Minnesota game on TNT. This is how, and I'm not a mastermind in marketing, but this is marketing 101 kind of stuff. And so if I don't see this out of college football, and if they're not doing things during pregame shows and postgame shows and halftime shows highlighting that TNT is going to have first round playoff games, then when the ratings come out and they get beaten into submission by the NFL, then they'll know that they'll probably not know what happened. Okay, quarterfinal games, those are going to be the bowl games. Of course, the first round on campus. And so there we see on New Year's Eve, one game. New Year's Eve, there's going to be, I saw how many games on New Year's Eve. Was it New Year's Eve or New Year's Day? New Year's Eve. Yes, New Year's Eve. I believe there are 8 football games on New Year's Eve, but there's only going to be one playoff game. So there's going to be just a ton of games on during the day. Bowl games, and then the Fiesta Bowl as a quarterfinal game, and then the 3 games on Saturday, of course, highlighted by the Rose Bowl in terms of a time slot, always has the Rose Bowl. So they're going to have traditional time slots for the Rose Bowl and Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day. And then we are not having what we've had in the past, a semifinal doubleheader. So gone are the days of these past 10 years of having semifinal matchups back-to-back. They're going to be back-to-back nights. Is that a smart move? Probably. That probably is a smart move because not a whole lot of people. So consider this. January 9th and 10th, I'm guessing that's a Friday and Saturday. So January 9th and 10th. That sounds like a divisional playoff weekend. So if that's a Friday night on January 9th, somebody can look that up. January 9th, it's got to be a Friday. So they're clear of the NFL. I'm guessing they're going to run into an NFL game on January 10th. I've not heard that publicized like it is in the first round, but I got to think that that's going to be an NFL playoff game, right? Right now, the NFL plays playoff games. Usually what happens is that the NFL will play a Saturday doubleheader. They've just done this in maybe the last 10 years. Saturday doubleheaders later in the day. So they take advantage of the Saturday night crowd where it used to be a 1-4 Saturday, 1-4 Sunday. Now it's the later Saturday games. They kick off one at like 4 o'clock, the other one at 8 o'clock, and then Sunday's the traditional 1-4. What's Jackson saying here? Put the Saturday NFL divisional playoff matchups on the afternoon, then put the college football championship game on Saturday night. Well, this is what would happen if people cooperated and they cared. The NFL is not going to do that. The NFL doesn't care about. So you're talking about the national championship game on a Saturday night. So if we go to the NFL schedule, 2024, 2025 NFL playoff. Let's see if it's, Okay, here we go. So, and you got to know that this is at the forefront of what college football powers that be are doing when they set up their schedule. What are they doing first and foremost? They're looking at the NFL schedule. More than anything, they are looking at the NFL schedule. And the NFL playoff schedule is Saturday the 11th. Okay, college football is the 9th and 10th. Okay, that's what they're doing. Look at that. Folks, if you didn't know it until now, or if you, for people that don't like the NFL, wanted to ignore it in some way, this shows you right here the dominance of the NFL on the American sports landscape. This shows it right here. Because I was thinking, are they running headlong into the NFL? Nope, this shows you how mighty the NFL is. College football is playing on Thursday and Friday night, which Friday night's a decent window, and so is Thursday night. But let's not kid ourselves. If there was no NFL, when would college football be playing? Saturday. They'd be playing on Saturday. They are clearing out for the NFL playoffs. Okay, that makes more sense. I just didn't consider it because they haven't played any playoff games on Thursday, unless it was New Year's Eve. So anyway, there you go. So we are going to have quite a weekend of football. We're going to have a playoff game on Thursday, playoff game on Friday, 2 semifinal games. And then the NFL takes over on Saturday with a triple header and then a double header on Sunday. And they don't even go to the traditional 1 and 4 anymore on Sunday. And then they spread it out to Monday. So there is going to be football on. If there aren't more divorces in the next couple of years, I'll be shocked across America. So there's going to be big time, like playoff, college and NFL football, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Again, everyone, check out our conversation with Bill Bender of Sporting News. It's an excellent conversation concerning college football and what the future could look like. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time right here at the Voice of College Football.